box right now, right? I'm missed. Yeah. Let me shift to play mode. Give me just a second. Well, first, as this is setting up, I just want to say it is an honor to be here. And let me share the screen. And this is one of those cases where you can't walk and chew gum at the same time. That's kind of the case. All right. Are we sharing now?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I gotta say it's been probably one of the most I don't even know the word to throw at this in preparation for this presentation. I've gone on over a lot of different things that I wanted to say, wondered about saying, and then I was meeting this morning with Joe Fothery. Maybe some of you have met Joe. He's been hired by the Oak Ridge School System to help us look at how we can accelerate and drive innovation across our region. And we're actually doing some brainstorming sessions around what might an innovation center look like from the perspective of multiple stakeholders, from AMSI to the city. And we kind of throwing this around. How many of you have been to Epcot? All right. How many of you think that really is the prototypical community of tomorrow? Not really. But what might that look like here if Oak Ridge was to take that on? And if we were to look at that from the future integration of education and life and accelerated learning, what might that look like? So we're actually beginning to put things together and ask stakeholders in, because to address the rising needs, we've got to think of things differently. And so we're beginning to look at that. So that's what I've been doing today. The talk is really centered around that exact topic. How can we empower the next generation of innovators today? I don't think anybody in here can dispute the fact that we're in dire need of innovation. If you define innovation as value delivery, creation of something that is meaningful and delivers value and helps us to remain competitive, that's going to be vital as we look forward. So this is a topic, we're going to go fast and furious. I've got a lot of content. What I plan to do is to set up the challenge that we're facing, at least as I see it. I'm going to look at it through several different lenses. One, having spent 32 plus years doing applied research and being exposed to a lot of brilliant ideas and people. I see several of those faces in the room that have been an influence in my life, but also what we've been doing for the last handful of years at Oak Ridge High School and some of the initiatives. So I want to share that with you. And really, I'm interested in getting your feedback. So here we go. Maybe. Here we go. First, I want to start off by saying thank you to many of our partners. If your name's not on here, it's on me. The only way that this program can be successful is through partnerships. We're looking at new models for public-private partnerships to be able to accelerate learning and education and workforce development and transformation. And it's only by looking at new models of how we can do that collectively, collaboratively, and very creatively in an experimenting mindset are we going to be able to do that. So these are a number. You'll notice on here names in the room, names that are emerging, and maybe even some international names as we look at this challenge here. So if I also want to lead with this at the end, there's going to be a slide, which is a call to action. There's some very specific things that I think you can do, given the wealth and wisdom and resources of the folks that are not only in the room, but also online, on how we can work together to collaboratively do this. So just wanted to lead with that. I'm also going to lead, this is a quote I've used multiple times, light yourself on fire and with passion, and people will come from miles to watch you burn. So I hope this is not crash and burn, but I think you will sense as we go through the topics that it is something that I'm very passionate about. And so, yeah, I think that'll come through. I want to set this up to tell the tale of an epic journey. We've all seen or heard epic journeys before, but I want you to think of yourselves as being the heroes in this journey, and the learning that is going to go on as a part of that. So we're gonna talk that through. And with all epic tales, we start with a set of crises that we're gonna look at facing us. So we're gonna highlight a few of those. Before we get started, got a little bit of context. I had the privilege of spending 32 plus years at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I used to tell folks I collaborated with outside of the lab that if you're humble enough, you can learn anything because you can pretty much walk down the street and find a world expert in any field. And so if I'm smart and anything there, it's because of the people that I work with that rubbed off on me, that we work together, but have a phenomenal opportunity to do a lot of different things and work with a lot of brilliant people. One of the things that I've done at Oak Ridge High School is to try to take as much of that learning and to package it into an innovative program that really unleashes creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship in the next generation of innovators. So we'll talk a bit about that. And this merges the world of learning, education, as well as FIRST robotics. One of the things that I like to say is that the program that at least we've been developing is it's a cord of three strands. You're going to hear me talk about iSchool, which was really a school of innovation. You're going to hear me talk about Wildcat Manufacturing, which is a dual enrollment, work-based learning, student-run enterprise where students do provide design and manufacturing services, and they actually get paid as a part of a profit-sharing model. So one of the things we're attempting to do is to create a sustainable business model through a partnership. So as an educational institution, we're not just going with our hands out, but we're saying, what can we do together that's a win-win-win and delivers value and opportunity and real-world experience for our students? And then the third is a program that I've been a part of for 14 years, and that's the FIRST program, which stands for Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology, which is a microcosm of the things we face today. And so we're kind of bringing all those things together in this learning experience. I'm going to quote probably something you've all heard or at least seen snippets about. We've been told that we're at the crossroads of really facing a Manhattan Project 2.0 level set of crises in the world of energy and AI, and in advanced manufacturing and quantum. And that it's imperative that we as a nation continue or at least strive to maintain the leadership in a way that is humane and ethical and responsible and leads to things that we want from human flourishing. So that's a huge challenge that we face. Just a week ago, Dr. Streifer was in this room and kind of laid out a couple of challenges to us. One of the things he mentioned is that from his perspective, solving the energy problem and the AI problem are the same thing in a very real sense. From generation through transmission and distribution, responsibly, reliably, sustainably. And he also said we must reestablish our leadership in advanced manufacturing to be able to create, deliver value and goods. And so the integration of these technologies provides some very unique challenges for us in this community as we look at standing up a nuclear renaissance here and becoming what we hope will be a city on a hill as a model of how folks might be able to do these kind of things for the future. So, one of the questions I pose is, if this is real, if we look at this integration of AI and quantum and advanced manufacturing and robotics and automation, how in the world are we going to meet the educational and workforce challenges that we face? The president issued a few weeks past an executive order mandating a new challenge for the introduction of artificial intelligence in K-12 education to be able to establish and to maintain a leadership in the technology. But I got to tell you, it's got to be more than ChatGPT. We've got to look at new generations of science that are going to break through into quantitative science, physics-based science, truth-seeking science, of which is more than just training on the mass literature that's been published on the World Wide Web and to put together a statistical model. That is Chuck Agel. Sorry, Chuck, I'm not going to answer your call. Chuck, by the way, is a phenomenal aid to us in running our program. He's in the class for me today. I hope it's not an emergency. So Chuck, if you're watching, forgive me. The other thing I want to posit, though, with the rapid accelerated change that we see around us, how many of you know the song, Future So Bright, You Gotta Wear Shades? I'm not going to break out in song, but yeah, we're dating ourselves. So depending on where you sit, the future can look incredibly bright. But poised with this new technology is this ongoing discussion of promise or peril? Is it going to be utopia or dystopia? If you look at the accelerating rate of change, many are thinking that we will have phenomenal breakthroughs, but will humanity survive to realize them? Because of the unintended consequences of the technologies in an uncoordinated race to unleash features. And that hits right at the heart of what we're trying to do in the education space. So I want to set this before you that's our challenge. There is great opportunity, there is great promise, but with as in all things, there's the great peril that holds sway as well if we don't go forward responsibly, ethically, looking at a very humane way to proceed. So I'm going to set the table for you. So when we look at job outlooks, there's this many studies out there that are saying that automation and AI is going to radically change the landscape. And it's got to be more than just productivity. And what you're beginning to see is that it's not what we thought were the automation jobs. It's the lesser challenging knowledge jobs that are in great peril. So that sets up a whole new set of challenges and the things where we need people to think critically and creatively, even more so. How do we do it? So there's incredible opportunity, but challenge that face us here. What about the growing workforce skills gap? I see this in spades. I interact with many people in industry. We're facing it in our own valley as we look at the nuclear renaissance and the entire set of skills that are going to be needed to be able to sustain this accelerating resurgence of nuclear technology, automation to support the industries that are there, and the skills gap are growing at an accelerating pace. Particularly when you think of technology, we live in a science region that's saturated. When you move beyond that to a highly accelerating tech market, we used to say that technology doubles roughly every 18 months. Now that was based on Moore's law, which had more to do with the transistor size and silicon. So now I'm going to contend that we're in a set of compounding exponentials. When you look at speed of processors, when you look at density of memory, when you look at network connectivity, and you look at the power of AI, particularly now when you've got a recursive set of algorithms that can improve themselves. The rapid accelerating rate of change is faster than we've ever seen before. And what I'm going to contend is that we got to move fast. But we don't want to do this. Microsoft actually flipped, but they said their new sales pitch is AI, spend less money on humans. Well, we don't want to do that. One of the big fears is as we look at the need to reskill, upskill, and new skill the existing workforce, we cannot go in with an attitude where they feel threatened. Number one, if they do, the quality of their existing work is going to go down. And so we got to figure out how we can do that. And so when we begin to look at education, we're looking at, I'm going to call it lifelong. We used to say K to gray, but now the new term is P20 or P20 plus, right? Is how can we create a learning innovation ecosystem that accelerates what we're learning about the science of learning for our kids, but beyond. And I got to tell you, the pedagogy and the other is different. The developmental cognitive neuroscience is different. The sensitive and critical periods of the brain are different. So one size all does not fit. So we got to come at this in a very open and collaborative way that is truly trying to drive the future of learning forward. But I'm going to posit to you a handful of crises. Number one is a crisis in the current educational system. It is not ready. This is not me speaking that. There's been a number of studies that have gone back. This is a 2022 survey. It's gone further than that. This was an American Society of Mechanical Engineers study that looked at the future of work. And what they looked at was the accelerating rate of change of technology, and the existing models in most academia is there's not an incentive to change. And so there's other things that roll into that. But there's got to be some modification there. So when they looked at this, you can't see it. I'm going to share the slides with you. But when they're looking at the world of advanced automation and manufacturing, we teach in the world of silos. The educational system teaches in silos, not because it's best for the learners, because it's easier for us as teachers. I mean, so when we look at the objectives of the system, we should be honest with ourselves and step back and look at this. But when we look at the role of automation in manufacturing, you've got mechanical engineers, you have process integration engineers, and you have the operators. Double down on that with unions, and it gets even harder because we reinforce silos. what they're seeing with the accelerated rate of machine learning, automation, other things in the AI world, you can almost think of these as a distribution function where each of these areas have a deeper expertise, but the crossover into automation, AI, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, generative design, they're blending. I actually got a call 3 months ago from someone that's heading up a brand new firm looking at automation in the defense and aerospace sector. He heard about Wildcat Manufacturing. He says, Mark, if your kids can do boom, 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 and I'll fill in those later on, we will hire them out of high school making $100,000 to $120,000 a year. We are in such need of people that understand that skill set. Now, this is not pushing a button. This is actually taking a design, working on collaboratively and figuring out how to modify it for manufacturability, automation, and precision quality parts. So it's understanding and speaking that language. So it's huge. The other thing that we've got to do is we've got to figure out how to accelerate time to talent. And what we mean by that is most industries, as soon as you hire something, whether it's out of a high school, a 2-year degree, a 4-year plus degree, everyone's telling me it is taking too long for that person to become value creating on the job. By the time, so they come in and then you got to completely retrain them for the way that you do things. So there's a mismatch there. So we've got to reduce or accelerate the time to talent. And how do we do that in this accelerating world? So that's part of a challenge. And we have a growing skills gap. Crisis 2, the accelerating rate of change. Yuval Harari is famous for this quote, and I share this with my kids in the class all the time. You're going to have to learn how to learn to reinvent yourself, because the jobs that you're thinking about haven't been created yet. And if you think you're going to learn a degree and go and work the rest of your life in that field, wake up. It's not happening. And so we've got to have a completely different mindset and an understanding of what learning is, what growth and development is for a life that is rapidly changing. That's a radical shift to be able to do that. You look at Kurzweil's laws of accelerating returns and his continued look at this when you look at the double exponential of summations and change. And this is looking at the ability of computation. And we're already beyond this, because now we have AI that is recursively improving itself, and it is actually using itself to design new chips and new subsystems that are more efficient and more computationally efficient to create a double exponential there. So there's also rapidly changing there. So we got rapid rate of change. The third, most of you in this room are very familiar with this, but the big, hairy, audacious problems in the world are interdisciplinary, and they require teams. We teach in silos. I'm proud to say I'm loving what the Keck Center is doing at the University of Tennessee. It is creating an interdisciplinary. It's not to say you're not going to go deep in a field. Absolutely, you can, and we must have in some areas. But you've got to be conversant, interdisciplinary, and cross-functional in a world of rapidly accelerating change, in a world that is made up of volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous that's growing. So we've got to understand how to be cross-functional and to work as part of a team. The fourth crisis, which may be the biggest one facing us yet, is the crisis of disengagement. This was the pivot point that brought me back to Oak Ridge to teach. I left the lab. I was consulting. I was hired as a transformation consultant because what I'd done at the lab is we were booting up innovation teams and those things. Scrum Inc. said, we need you to help us create innovation, lean and agile teams to work differently. So I worked at Astra, I worked at John Deere, we worked at Northrop Grumman, we worked at other aerospace industries trying to boot up their innovation teams. Well, the things that we noticed as we started looking at this is when I go into a room like this and I ask you to raise your hand, how many of you are here because you want to be? And there's 1 or 2, 3 hands. And I say, how many are here because your boss said you got to be here? And the room raises their hands. I got about 15 minutes to convince you why what we're about to do is meaningful and matters. Disengagement is huge. Well, we came across this study when we were doing it. This is not just this, but there's been many others, the Gallup poll. It looked at the state of disengagement in any company, and these are global numbers, and it's astronomical. And this is back in 2021, 87% of employees worldwide are not engaged at work. They're putting in their time, right? They're there to draw a paycheck. I'm here, but you want me to do something, you got to do something else. I mean, we see it all the time. Walk into any store. How hard is it to get help, support? Now, not all the places are that way, but it's very much that way. The percentage of the U.S. in 2016, 32% are disengaged, 13 worldwide. So here's the challenge. This is bad enough. It was mindset when I did transformation consultant work, right? This is pretty bad. The numbers say is if we could actually get our employees to engage, to bring the best versions of themselves, to help solve problems, to deliver value, to be creative, 147% increase alone in productivity. These are global numbers. Now we're an exception here. We live in an exceptional valley. Those of us that worked at the lab, most people came to work because they were excited about what they were doing. They were curious and they engaged. Now a lot of them worked solo. They didn't work well in teams, but they were engaged in what they were doing. Right? It's the innovator's dilemma. Right? We fall in love with our problems and not necessarily others. And as long as we can get paid to pursue those esoteric areas of science, that's how we drive science. But another conversation for another day when we're dealing with applied things. But this next slide is the one that got me. So what I want you to take away here is that in the United States here, these numbers, we have only 18% that are actively engaged. This is in 2016. Do you think this is better or worse after COVID?
Yes.
But only 52% are not engaged, and we've got 20% actively disengaged. That means people are undermining what you're doing. Okay? Check this out. This was a Gallup poll on engagement in education for kids 4th through 12th grade. The die is cast by the time they graduate from high school. I see it in the classroom. Actually, it's worse than this now. My wife taught elementary school for years. I would go in as guest scientist in the classroom. I would help her work with Lego League kids. Curious, they would try anything. They loved learning. They loved all of that stuff. By the time I started seeing them in high school, I thought, somebody's rewired their brains. I mean, seriously. They dewired, rewired, they completely it's radically changed. The scary secret is that is exactly what's happening. We'll talk about that in a minute. But engagement is huge. If you give me somebody that's engaged, we can teach them anything. But if they're not engaged, it's hard to teach anything. And so that's the number one challenge. And you see there's a bump here as seniors because they're afraid that, I've got to graduate, I got to get gear. Can't tell you how many kids come in now. I got to lock in this year, I got to graduate, I got to get a job. It's even worse now. So it gets worse. Disengagement and decreasing test scores. This is math. The numbers are more recent than this. I can show you. Notice the date here as it starts tipping radically about 2010, 2012. And we're seeing the test scores drop precipitously. These are U.S. test scores. This is in math. This is in reading. If we can't do math and we can't read, how can we do science? How can we do the hard things that are facing us? There's challenges there. By the way, I'll share these slides. There's lots of other data if you want to dig in and look. So what I want to tell you though is, or a thesis I have, is that I think a lot of this were unintended consequences. Mark Zuckerberg is famous for saying we move fast and break things. Unless you're breaking stuff, you're not moving fast enough. I want to say we learn fast and make things here in Oak Ridge, right? That's what we want to do. But there's unintended consequences. I'm going to try to make the case here. As technologists, and I'm saying that's what we are in the community, that's what I am when I'm working in education, there really ought to be 3 rules of technology, whether we voice them or not. Number 1 is that when we invent a new technology, we uncover a new class of responsibilities. Number 2, if that technology confers power, you start a race. A race to start a business, a race to keep employed, a race to capture the market, you start a race. And the last is that if you do not coordinate the race, it ends in tragedy. And we've seen this in a lot of places. So, great quote from Charlie Munger, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. Here's the thing I want us to think about for just a minute. Time and human intention are finite. Okay, so when we're talking about education, when we're talking about workforce, when we're talking about third thinking, to a first order, our attention is driven. I mean, there are different types of attention, but the attention that we're interested in, the neocortex, the thinking brain, the rational, the order, the executive function brain, we can really only pay attention to one thing at a time, deep focused attention. We kid ourselves a lot. We task switch, other things. There's a lot of good cognitive neuroscience around that, but it's finite. So if the incentive is to capture as much of your attention as possible, then you learn that we are all a bunch of animals in a Pavlovian behavioral experiment. So Stanford Persuasive Technology Lab stood up in Silicon Valley at Stanford. This is a textbook out of the course, using computers to change the way we think and do. Almost every one of the folks that are a part of the social media engines went through these classes. And the goal was just to capture your attention, right? To keep you engaged. So now there's a world of supercomputers on the other side of that piece of glass that have a better predictive model, and they know us better than we know ourselves. They're just feeding us the next piece to keep us engaged. Persuasive tech is a design intentionally applied to the extreme where we really want to modify someone's behavior. We want them to take an action. We want them to keep doing this thing with their finger. So my contention is humanity's first contact with social media. First contact with AI, was in social media. And we told ourselves a lot of things that social media is a great thing. It connects people. It gives people a voice. It does all kinds of amazing things when we view it as technology. Technology in the service of our aims, our goals, and our desires. But as soon as that gets flipped on its head, we end up with all kinds of unintended consequences. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch The Social Dilemma. It's a documentary done by Tristan Harris. Tristan was the ethicist at Google that began looking at and uncovering a lot of the data, the things that was happening. And he just said, we just think, let's wake up. Do we really mean this to happen? Things that are there. And you can go to all kinds of things. But what I want to tell you that right at that point, the AI we were dealing with was curation AI. It just meant it curated human generated content and it served it up in a way that would just keep you engaged. No, just keep you engaged. You're all adults. You can choose. You can do that. And from a cognitive neuroscience standpoint, what it was doing, it was tapping deep into the brainstem, and it was hitting a dopamine reward center to be able to reinforce activities, behaviors, and habits. It was not the kind of attention that we want, but it got your attention, and it held your attention. Because when you were doing that, you can't pay attention to anything else. And it feeds a deep neurological, dopamine-driven addictive pathway that's really hard to break. It just is. And so as a result of curation AI, we came up with this resulted in a lot of unintended consequences. I don't think anybody that set out to do this wanted these things to happen. We got information overload, addiction, doom scrolling, influencer culture. 2 years ago, the survey of 8th graders that asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? The number one answer was influencer. What was it when I grew up? What was it when y'all grew up? Astronaut. Scientist, whatever. So things have changed in that area. But the other is polarization, bots, deepfakes, all those kind of things through curation AI. We haven't fixed that problem. If you're interested in digging more, I recommend you take a look at this site, Center for Humane Technology. These are some folks that are banding together to say, yes, we need to develop technology. It is a collective action problem, but we need to work together to align technology and coordinate in a way that is secure, safe, reliable, and humane. So it's a leveraging of technology to that. Good resources, just encourage you to take a look at it. There's other resources I'll throw at your plate if you want to read them. This is looking at a bunch of data related to what's happening in society with attention, with learning, with other things. Some phenomenal reads in here from neuroscience. to some other books. So I encourage you to take a look. Most of these are very well documented. It's been an eye opener for me as I work with kids. I'm really, and I've worked with kids for over 2 decades now. So I've seen a pretty radical change in things, and I don't blame the kids. I used to say, "Oh, those kids," I don't blame the kids. One of the things I'm trying to get their kids to do is to take back their mind and take back their attention. And so we talk about how do we do that? How do we boot things up? So anyway, I think this is a huge challenge. We're all going to face it. You don't have to raise your hand, but think. How many of you, either in your homes or the homes of your children or grandchildren, that the number one contention of discussion is the use of digital devices? The number one things that drive strife and contention in the family. I gave a similar talk at the Digital Twin Consortium meeting in December. This is an international organization. Almost every hand went up. Almost every hand went up. So it's a challenge. So I'm going to give you some data real quick. Definition. Great book by Ann Lemke. She says the smartphone is the modern day hypodermic needle, delivering digital dopamine 24/7 for a wired generation. If you haven't met your drug of choice yet, it's coming soon to a website or an app near you. It knows me. I'm curious about science. I mean, and you think that's a good thing, but what are the opportunity costs if I'm not doing something else I ought to be that's aligned with the goal that I have, right? So again, the attention is finite. It is very persuasive. It is very effective. And I can self-rationalize that it's a good thing, right? Okay. All right. I encourage you to take a look at this book or give it to your daughters or grandkids or sons or whatever. Jonathan Hyatt says we've overprotected our children in the physical world and we've underprotected them in the online world. If you think the filters work, I've got some things I can point you to that would terrify you. If I'd known these when my kids were growing up and tech was there, it's just crazy. But anyway, I don't want to scare you. But here I want to give you some other data. Okay. This is the share of U.S. household adoption of technology. We all have curves, but take a look at it. The green is the introduction of radio. I wasn't alive then, but my grandparents told me about it, and just look at each one of these. Color TV. Here we have smartphones, the internet, microprocessor. So what you're seeing is this is the adoption rate, the saturation. We've never seen anything like this globally, the adoption of technology. And we're not really equipped well to do it. So this is interesting, right? This is huge. What I want you to take a look at is this swath here. When we have the combination of smartphones and social media. When the internet came out, you had to go and plug in and go, we got the modem, and all of us have done all that kind of stuff, right? I was talking to somebody the other day. Yeah, I was doing Telnet and Gopher and FTP, and I remember all those things. Trying to get to the archives and stuff. But now you basically have a supercomputer in your pocket on 24/7, which is cool for being able to learn things. But now, how many of you phantom buzz is in your pockets? Notifications. All right. This all came out of the persuasive technology school at Stanford on how to get us to pay attention and then pull us into somewhere else. So there we go. But I want you to look at that swath at accelerating rate. Percentage of U.S. undergraduates with mental health illness. Now this goes from anxiety and depression to some other physiological disorders. Look at the curves. Major depressive disorders in the last year, U.S. teens. What you begin to see is it hits early in the 20 teens and it affects girls more than it affects boys. U.S. anxiety prevalence. These are the percentage increases since 2012. Off the charts. This is U.S. But it's not just an American problem. Take a look at the data. Here we're looking at UK. Here we look at Canada. These are hospitalizations in Australia and New Zealand. This is the European nations and worldwide. Now, when you begin looking at social media consumption, off the charts. So what I want you to take away is that these are 2025 stats. Globally, on average, People spend 6 hours and 40 minutes on screen per day. Daily screen times increased rapidly. The average American spends 7 hours looking at the screen each day. Almost half of 0 to 2-year-olds interact with a smartphone. Go read Proust and the Squid. Go read Reader Come Home. There's something that's happening to the neurological brain that we don't understand that's happening in the critical periods of development. We have critical periods, we have sensitive periods. It doesn't mean that things can't change. So don't get me wrong. Neuroplasticity is an amazing thing. There's a lot that can be done, but the level of effort and focus it takes to undo, rewire, and unwire is off the charts compared to what it is at critical periods and sensitive periods in neurological development. It just is. It's just the way we're made. The bottom line, Gen Zers on average spend 9 hours of screen time per day. I ask my kids, when do you get your homework done? What homework? Right? So, I mean, it's enough. If I told you, I'm going to give you this fuzzy little creature that your kids can take home, and it's free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it's cute, and it sings songs and plays back to them, and all those kind of things. And oh, by the way, they got to play with it 9 hours a day. Would you do that? Here's some other data, breakdown of average teen screen time, TV, gaming, social media. So it's not all in one thing, but it's a mix. It's all over the place. It's all over the place. So Jonathan mentions 5 foundational harms, and I'm going to just lay this out, and we're going to move on. These are the things that are the unintended consequences of basically having our attention stolen. Social deprivation. If I'm on the this is a phenomenon now. It's called, what is it? Continuous partial attention. I always get the terms right. I mean, you see it all the time. There's people sitting around the table and they're on their phones. Oh yeah, did you see that? You're not attentive. You're not there, but you're all collective and you're all on your devices. And what we're communicating unattendedly, but this thing is more important than you are. I don't think we mean that, but it's just become acceptable. So we're fragmented and our attention is those kinds. So social deprivation, and during critical periods, it's vital to learn, conflict management, how to resolve things as you're developing. And if you don't get those fired up, things aren't good. Sleep deprivation, documented well. Get the phones out of the bedrooms. I mean, even us, it's so easy to get pulled right back in. Oh, you hear a notification, and then you're gone. Also, there's a lot of other things that are happening to the neuroscience with sleep deprivation. That's a vicious feedback cycle in this whole thing, because this is a system. Attention fragmentation. There's a great documentary that I'll share with you. What happens to the mind on news? This was a documentary about the neuroscience of somebody that was just so much needed to be connected to the news, of what it altered, what it basically conditioned the mind to attend to, and what it unwired or had it not attend to. As we think, we become, right? The way the brain works, which is a great thing, but it also happens. So attention fragmentation, addiction, it is very well documented, the issues that are there with addiction. But probably, I think, one of the worst foundational harms is the opportunity cost. What are we not doing with those 9 hours a day when we're doing these other things, not to mention the other stuff? So it's huge. So when I'm facing this in education, when I'm trying to grab the attention of a 12-year-old or a 17 or an 18-year-old or others, and to get them to think about the very pressing, hard, difficult things, if they cannot pay attention and think deeply about things, it's a real challenge. And by the way, whatever I do in that 45 minutes to an hour and a half, as soon as they pull the device off and they're running down the halls, what do you think happens to what was happening neurologically that's there? There's real neuroscience. So anyway, okay, done with that. Jonathan Hyatt says puberty is a rewiring of the brain from child form to the adult form, guided by what's coming in. Folks, what's coming in? The brain shape. Okay, enough of that. There's hope. So let's pause a minute. I'm going to pick up the pace, but there is hope. And this is where you come in. This is where we come in together. And I'm going to play some of these out. Great quote by Kettering: a problem well stated is a problem how solved. I think some of these things we talked about are real challenges, but I think there's things we can do collectively. A lot of it's collective action. A lot of things we can do collectively to engage and build up curiosity, engage in meaningful things, and all the other stuff that's there. So we can do it. I throw this up for humor. You know, I've got a video of a kid walking the other day in the rain to his class down the street. I've got a video from last summer, kids on their bike at the beach on a phone. I mean, that's how it's so done. But yeah, anyway, just funny. But so we can't solve problems with the same thinking we used to, right? We need a new model. One of the things I'm going to give you as a key to doing this is this idea of intrinsic motivation. Dan Pink, any of you familiar with Dan Pink's work? Phenomenal book, The Secret of What Truly Motivates Us. And so what he discovered is that intrinsic motivation, that's that internal motivation. It's not the carrot and stick reward that we use anytime we try to manipulate behavior, whether it's learning or doing anything else, has to do with 3 pillars or 3 points. One is agency or autonomy. The other is mastery. And the last is purpose. So one of the things I'm doing in the classroom is we're trying to relate real world opportunities in learning to things that matter. That is purpose. Why am I learning this? I ask the kids all the time. Mastery, they're learning something that they boot up a mastery of. They've got a skill, they've got a competency, they've got an understanding, they've got something that they can use. And the other is agency or voice, the ability to take that and to apply it and to use it and to modify it. Those are huge. So everything we do there has got to be driven around these pieces. Number 2, we need high-performing cross-functional interdisciplinary teams. We're stronger and smarter than we others. Stephen Johnson has been paraphrased as saying, there are great individuals who make breakthroughs, but no innovation actually happens without the synthesis and collaboration of a group. Back to the point, all the really difficult problems are interdisciplinary and cross-functional. So how do we teach and train that? Well, we're doing things in the classroom that are booted up around collaborative thinking and working. I tell the kids when they come into my class, there's no such thing as cheating. In the real world, you're learning from your collaborators. You're trying to learn. So when we're trying to solve this problem, if I'm in a class with Martin and he has figured it out, I don't copy his answer. I go, how'd you do that? How did that work? Because it's about learning how to learn and sharing our experience. And so I tell them at the beginning of the class, our goal this semester is to learn as much as we can, as fast as we can, as fun as we can. You know, and that's what it needs to be. So we do that. We try to boot that up. Some key takeaways. I use this with my students. I compel them to take back their attention. All right. Turn off all notifications. Use it as a tool it was intended to do. You can connect, you can communicate, but do it on your own terms. Take all social media apps off your phone. All of them. Now, some of you in the room, most of you don't, but that's not the case with kids. Reestablish healthy sleep patterns and reconnect in the physical world. Have a friend. Develop a hobby. Go fishing. You know, we do something every term called a wonder walk, where I have the kids take a 15-minute walk, leaving all their devices back somewhere away from anybody else. And I want them to think before they go. And then as they go along the walk, I said, use all your senses: smell, touch, hearing, taste, everything. And at the end of it, I want you to reflect on what you experienced and what would happen if you would do more of that in your life. By the way, Jonathan Hyatt teaches a class in New York University on human flourishing, and his freshmen that come in, they're trying to help them recope to regain their ability to focus and do things. So we borrow from that. So there's that. Key 4, as we work together, this is a fascinating quote from E.O. Wilson, that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. Right? So how do we work together as trustworthy institutions as we're thinking about education and other things to create a model that helps? So that's a funny one. In an abundance economy, though, speed, not money, is a new currency. So again, I want to press a sense of urgency as we look at experimenting in a learning model. Here's my concern, and maybe your experience is different. In most academic environments, we teach behind the curve. Why? Because we've learned from a guild. We learn what happens. We learn everything else. We teach behind the curve, or we teach where we are now. There are exceptions, but they're rare, and they've got to be highly incentivized. Because, right, the time to do test books and lectures and everything else, to stay on the edge moving is a difficult thing. Well, particularly in the area of technologies, how do we create a learning innovation in an environment that is looking ahead of the curve? Well, one of the models that we're trying to posit in this regional innovation center we're standing up is we're trying to go to local businesses and say, where do you need to be in the area of automation, manufacturing, other things in 2 to 5 years? You can't afford to take your processes offline right now to figure that out. Let's invest together. Let's set up those environments. Let's figure those things out. What are the interconnects? What's the data? What's the model? What works? What doesn't work, to de-risk it? And so at the end of that set of experiments, they can take that learning and they can do the CapEx investment things, and they can put the things in. And oh, by the way, we're wanting them to work with us at night. So they're running those same experiments on the equipment they're going to be running in their facilities. And so now they got a workforce that already is beginning to upskill, reskill, and new skill. And oh, by the way, guess what you've also created? Pipeline of new students that are interested in applying that technology and continuing to work on it. So we're beginning to have those conversations with some local companies to apply that space. Pick it up. So social norms, we talked about that. Love this quote. There's no such thing as a failed experiment, only experiments with unexpected outcomes. So what I introduce in my class is something called the starter kata for scientific thinking. Anybody familiar with Mike Rother's work? The Toyota Way? All right. Rother has studied very, very, very much what is beautiful about the culture inside Toyota of scientific learning, problem solving. They've identified it as, we call it lean, but it's lean thinking. And actually agile, the scrum of the grandfathers was lean. So it flows out of Deming and it flows out all the other things. So Rother studied very, very deeply. It's not the practices that make it, it's the mindset. And so he created this framework called the continual improvement kata. It's a starter kata. It's very, very simple. You got a goal that you want to try to achieve. And this is done both individually and collaboratively. You've got a current condition. Where are we now? What do we know? What do we don't know? What are our processes? Okay, what's our target condition? What's the goal that's a short enough distance out that we need to try to find our way? It's like navigating with a compass, not a map. And we say, okay, then what are the experiments we need to do? What do we need to build? What do we need to investigate? It's like walking in the dark with a flashlight. The flashlight is the extent of your knowledge. So the cool thing is you run the experiments, and at the end of the experiments, you say, what did you expect? Okay, this is what we expected. What did you observe? Did it match or is it different? If it's different or if it's the same, why? And if it's the same, guess what? We haven't learned anything. We just validated something we already knew. So how do we push the frontiers and realize that in school, it's not failure, it's experimentation and learning and an understanding and a synthesis. So, how do we do that in a way that's there? So what we did, I'm going to finish in 5 minutes. We created this program called the Innovative High School Model. It was a grant from the state of Tennessee. Remember, rewind to the slides where I did the survey about disengagement, and I said, whoa. So I called Holly up. She's the CTE director here in Oak Ridge. I'd been working for Scrum Inc. They hired me because I wanted to do this professionally to help organizations figure this stuff out. When I realized that mindset was the problem, I thought, man, if I go back to school and we teach those kids, if they come out of school thinking this way and problem solving that way, I'll be out of a job as a consultant, but the world will be a better place. So why don't we figure that out? I'd already been teaching dual enrollment classes at Oak Ridge High School. I taught first period class. We did industrial Internet of Things. We did an intro to AI. We did CAD. We did a bunch of other things. And so I said, Holly, I want to come back home. I've been on the road. I've been consulting. And I said, I don't know what it's going to be. I'm going to just try to plug into the school and help where I can. And she goes, hey, Mark, there's a grant from the state of Tennessee around an innovative high school model. Why don't we take all this stuff you've been talking about and been doing at night in robotics and you did at the lab, why don't we write a proposal? We did. I wish I knew now what I knew then. I would have asked for more money. The reviewers said on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 21. And so we were trying to take some very innovative things, but it asked us how to rethink the use of space-time partnerships and modes of learning. So we synthesized everything I'd been learning about learning theory associated with organizations, about lean and agile, about experimentation, about iterative and incremental development and innovation. And we've been running the robotics team for a number of years, experimenting with these things. Another talk for another day. I actually did one professionally. It was called A Tale of Two Journeys. So the theory that I was running at Oak Ridge National Lab and some of the research groups that we were booting up, I was running the same experiments with high school kids. How do you iterate? How do you plan? How do you do? We were doing all those things together. Actually, the kids got it better than the adults. But anyway, so we took that model, we wrote the grant, and so this is what we did. We applied the build, measure, learn feedback cycle. Now it's been adopted from a lean startup perspective, identifying the riskiest or most valuable things, and then test them first. That's validated learning. That's the build, measure, study, act loop of the Deming cycle. It's everything that we know from learning and cycle. So we drove that to help inform things. So we folded this into the classroom. At the lab, I was running a lot of Scrum. I did some R&D teams and some other things in that way. And so we did interdisciplinary cross-functional things in LDRD. So we took quantum physicists and electrical and others and try to drive some things in that space. The first go at it was a bit tough, but on the back end, the scientists loved it. It was kind of fun. So we leveraged those things. This was the first ever at the time digital twin of the grid. We could actually detect cyber attacks using a digital twin of the grid. So we were doing industrial Internet of Things. And so we actually created this industrial DevOps world where we could simulate. We could then run faster than real-time simulation. We could do hardware in the loop. We could do power hardware in the loop. And we could do an operational grid. And it allowed us to move experiments as rapidly as we possibly could in a commercial environment. We're setting the same thing up at the high school to accelerate learning. So we took these things and then I applied them, like I said, at night. With the first robotics team. It's a phenomenal world to play. And then this was our journey of experimenting and applying it. What I will tell you is that we have documented that a group of kids can quadruple their velocity in 6 weeks by following a process to be able to. It's kind of fun. We've actually created something called a learning velocity in the classroom and other things. We've adopted a model that looks similar to this. We use human-centered design. So it's using design thinking, lean startup, and agile in a way that has become second nature to the kids. I actually had a local company say, hey, can we send our engineers there? You run through a set of sprints with them, and you teach them how to do that by doing it. I mean, that was the dream of setting this up to begin with, so we can upskill to do that. So this is the feedback loop. This is a Secchi model. If you've never looked at the Secchi model, I commend it to you. It is a spiral of learning from a learning organization, but it involves the individual, the group, and the organization. And it's a combination of tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge and documentation. So we move from internal to external, to practice to theory. So you continually boot up and spiral your organization in a feedback loop of continual improvement. Phenomenal work there. It also links in really, really well with the cognitive neuroscience loop. I'm privileged to say we're partnering with the Deming Institute. If you should know Deming, but if don't, look at it. I had a call with Deming's grandson, Kevin Cahill. About an hour, we were talking about the program at the high school, and I said, listen, I want to introduce my kids to the world of Deming. I want to introduce them to his system of profound knowledge, which is an understanding of systems or appreciation for systems, variation, psychology, and theory of knowledge. It's also an introduction to the management principles and the things that he presented in Out of the Crisis and the New Economics. Deming was very visionary in doing that. And so he said, you know what? Absolutely. I will give your kids full access to everything that's in our library. So the kids have full access to all of the content that's there. And he said, oh, by the way, the CEOs of my company would like to come and talk to your kids. Because if they believe this stuff coming out of high school, we can teach them anything. He says, but I'm getting kids out of college that don't know how to solve problems and they don't buy into the mindset. And so, we've got to shift our knowledge. So we're partnering with Deming. We're introducing the kata. This is what I mentioned before. It actually starts at K8, but we're doing that for coaching. We're also running our Wildcat Manufacturing using a Scrum of Scrums. So we actually have multiple Scrum teams working together collaboratively. So I'm practicing all of the patterns that I've seen in industry that work great in innovation teams, and we're practicing it inside the company. The course sequences, there's an introduction. The last class is there. You can look at this later on. But I'm going to show you some pictures from the space. All of you are invited to come. There's a few of you in the room that have been here, so you can ask Jim and Alan and maybe a few others. You're welcome to come. We've been very, very blessed. We have multi-axis CNCs. We're about to stand up a wire arc additive manufacturing cell, which is a third of Medusa at ORNL. So the kids are learning wire arc additive manufacturing, digital twins, water jet, fiber laser, commercial 3D printers. We're giving the kids real world experience on real world tools, which is a blast. The kids are coming out with credentials, Scrum Masters and product owners. By the way, Scrumming is partnering with me. So I'm a trainer, and they said, yeah, train your kids. They get the classes for free. They get the credentials for free. We got kids walking out of high school as Scrum Masters, product owners, and Scrum at Scale practitioners. We had the privilege of doing a talk last year at AMSI on AI generative design, and these are two young ladies that were talking about a project that I'll mention in just a minute on the use of AI generative design and why they're doing the things that they need to be learning. The Giants of Oak Ridge project. I want to pause for a second to tell you about this one because I think you'll fall in love with it. So I won't tell you all of the backstory, but the goal is to create an exhibit that will be somewhere along the creek, Bissell Park area. And it's going to be an homage to the giants that were part of our nuclear heritage. There are going to be 8 statues, life-size figures of historical figures from the Manhattan Project. And the goal is to have the conning tower or a sail of a retired nuclear sub. So that's cool, right? This summer, we've got a partnership going on with ORAU and ORTIC, where we've got paid internships for students to develop the first generation of digital twins. So by the end of the summer, you will be able to come in and put on extended reality glasses and walk through a virtual tour of what this site's going to look like. So you'll get a chance to see the layout, see the experience. That's cool enough, right? Well, the next thing we're going to do is we're using generative AI to take old photographs. Here's a small scale model of Colonel Nichols. We're going to create a life-size statue. The first one is going to be of Colonel Nichols because of his involvement in the Manhattan Project. The students are then going to take and slice that. By the end of summer, it'll be a 12-inch desktop version. We're going to be doing, this is SLS technology. It's selective laser sintering, powder bed nylon, same basic technology they're using at Beehive or other places in steels and titaniums. This is just a little safer in nylon, but they're learning principles. And then they will, how many of you have kids or have you ever played Pokemon Go? I know what that was. So imagine Pokemon Go meets Night at the Museum. You're going to come up, you're going to scan a QR code, and in augmented reality, the statue is going to come to life with a ChatGPT and tell you about what they did as a part of the Manhattan Project, and you can ask it questions. Students are developing all of this. That's pretty cool, yeah? But then the next thing we're going to use is we're going to use wire arc additive manufacturing to produce a life-size statue. We're collaborating with folks at the MDF to be able to do that, to get direct to metal and metallurgy and those kind of things. But the really cool part is that we're going to segment it. It's going to go into the CNC to do fine level detailed CNC, and it's going to be stitched back together. And those are going to have interactive models played with those. Pretty cool tech, really neat stuff. So I'll give you the pictures for that as we're working out the process. What I will tell you as a result of this, because I want to cut to the chase, we were just announced we're going to be the 3rd test bed for the Digital Twin Consortium here at Oak Ridge High School for a global digital test bed. Our goal is to validate a framework for digital engineering to produce born qualified parts. Digital thread, digital twin of the additive, of the subtractive, and the digital engineering thread of the part. Our first qualified part is going to be the statues. The second is we're looking for collaborators to make a part that needs to go in, like a butterfly valve of a pump or something like that, to show how we will use this in a secure way to produce a part that is qualified for service. We're partnering with a bunch of local companies locally to do that. We've got a bunch of other partners. So I'm going to get through the rest of the slides. The other is we're working with the Scarborough 85 team on this particular project. And so we're looking at things there to be able to tell that story here in Oak Ridge, and our kids are a part of that team. We're making some early prototypes of parts of it. We're going to do some elements of immersive, because what the kids are realizing is that in about 18 months from now, most of us in the room will have some version of Google Glass or something else like that has augmented reality. Why? Because we can look things up, we can get directions. It's just going to be baked into our tech. Which means if you've got an exhibit, if I can walk up and right there in the interaction, I can get a pop-up that's contextualized about the history of what was going on. It can go as deep as I want to go. We've got an environment for continual learning. So we're talking about how do we set this up. We're partnering with the University of Tennessee. I can't go through all this. This is the digital twin test bed. By the way, these are some of the partners. We've got some global partners. I've got an MOA with Ingenuity and their AI test bed in Leeds, England. As well as some other international companies that are wanting to look at this as an experiment. We've also been asked by the MDF if we would consider doing training at night for companies that want to learn to use the technology. The other thing we've got on the back end of this is we're going to work with Ortic to scan the facility, to build a digital twin, and to develop training modules in enhanced reality. And so learning to use the machine, learning to use CAD, learning to use CAM. And we want to look at this as a learning model because the things that need to happen for a kid that's coming up learning it are going to be different from us. And so we're also collaborating with XM Pro, which is a multi-aided generative system. So they can actually say, you know, Lee's got a background in nuclear engineering, Martin's got a background in imaging. You know, what is the fastest way to boot this team up to use this technology to upskill, reskill, new skill? So we're working on models for that. I'm almost done, I promise. Wildcat Manufacturing, I encourage you to come take a look at that. And these are just some pictures. The picture up here, we actually did, wow, tens of thousands of dollars of work for a local company called Paraton. They were developing a first generation backpack portable robot. And so we worked with them to produce parts and turnaround and other things there. Projects with local community folks, from individuals to other things that are there. Everything from 3D printing to CNC to other things that are technological there. We've got something that hopefully will roll out in the next month at MVets. It's been a long time coming, but the students have designed and iterated. There's going to be a backlit water jet powder coated sign that's got the AMVETS logo and then all the armed forces around it. So they're doing things like that. Working with AMSI, Dream It, Do It, others to produce coins, people in the community. We're also doing ACE training. This is the Department of Defense program for America's Cutting Edge. So we run the boot camps out of our shop to teach and train others how to machine. And the cool thing is we have students teaching them with me, people from industry to be able to do that. Again, and a thank you to all of our partners. Call to action. How can you get involved? On mentorship. There's a lot of creative brilliance here. There's opportunities for you to come and engage with our kids. Come and lecture. Come give a talk. Tell them about what you're doing or what you did. Inspire them. Sponsor a project. Help us get the community aware of what we're trying to do in this new model of education that might inspire a new public-private partnership. Be on our board. Hold us accountable. Help us drive science. Help us provide real-world relevant work for our kids so they can connect their heritage to the future. You know, I really do want to be known for the place. You used to come to Oak Ridge to learn about history. Now come learn how to make it. Right. So, and then advisory board opportunities. And we're doing this at elementary school. Where are we headed next? We are looking at the potential of a regional innovation hub. Number one, do you need it? Number two, who needs to be involved? Number three, what does it need to look like? If it becomes the accelerator of learning, both from industry and education and a model, what does that look like? And at some point, we're going to have some public kind of information sessions to get feedback in a very, very broad sense, but we're trying to communicate and share there. All right, I'm done. Questions? I'm sorry it took so long. So her hand first, and then we'll come to yours. Yes.
So I'm privileged to have Chuck Aiken come to our Friday night work. Talk to me and 11 o'clock on Friday. And we were, just hugely impressed by the opportunity for us. Glad to hear. That guy just walked out. He has a book that I think he should go to your class reading. Talk about to your students. Critical connections at the lab. And also, we just had a speaker, Greg Katz, who's between ORNL and Roane State. He's starting to teach courses on project
management,
which I think your students get involved. You just mentioned reading, but some of them do jobs, and they're huge plan and they big salary. Some have gone to MIT or whatever as well. So it's really impressive program. And the multi-million-dollar machines that we were awarded with this special, just amazing.
Thank you so much. Pat, I saw his hand first. Yes.
How are you addressing the siloing and engagement questions? From my perspective, as I look at this, it strikes me that the students who would be involved are those who are capable, motivated, and engaged. And if they're not in one of those three categories, as they enter the high school, they're not gonna get into your program. So how are you addressing, how is what you have here addressing that?
So that's a great question. So if you didn't hear, it's how are we trying to address the questions of silo and engagement? So it's multifaceted. We, as our group and our robotics team, are engaged in the community. So for example, just last week, we were at the elementary school. And we're doing outreach. We've got a mobile lab. We've done work in the Scarborough community. We've done outreach activities in the Girls and Boys Club, at Girls Inc. and other places. So number one is awareness and engagement and expectation of the children that are younger, right? To be able to do that. The other is right now, my classes, there are no prereqs to get in. I will take any student, and that first class is really an experimentation class. Come, learn, experiment. We're beginning to look at these kind of models as how do we connect them back into the middle school and into elementary school to be able to help provide those engagement pathways, those opportunities that are there. So we're beginning to work right now. It's just one man in a truck and Chuck. So we're trying to expand. We've got recs out to hire other people. We've got other teachers that are trying to do that. I also sit on a committee on AI and education in the school. There's a number of things like that where we're trying to do that. We are doing one other thing, which I'll share, is I'm trying to get some support, hint, hint, if anybody wants to do it. So I came across a company that's a spin out of Case Western. The pilot we want to run is they have an ability that it's platform agnostic, that you can use any XR platform or a tablet. And let's say you're teaching a class. What's your favorite topic? Chemistry. Okay, so, I've got a class and I'm trying to introduce the students to covalent bonds, right? This is my entry class. And this allows you to work with AI. I need a 2-minute engaging demonstration of the intuition about what a covalent bond is and how it would relate to these kids where they are. And here are the things I need you to use. It actually will generate an immersive environment where you and your entire class can put on the headset and experiment what a covalent bond looks like and what it's used in. So the dream is we all know that in digital media technology and other things, that if we can prime the mind to be curious, to have an intuition, it's much easier to engage because it's relevant. So I want to do some workshops with teachers that are already teaching amazing things and help augment that in a way that would supplement the engagement piece. So we're going to be running some experiments to do some things like that to be able to try, but it's hard. One of the key factors is we got to educate the public. We thought one of the great things as an equalizer is that kids needed access. And so we had phones and internet technology and those kind of things. And that was real, right? Because there was a divide between those that had access to the internet and those that don't. Now we've unlocked the demons. No, it is used as a babysitter. And so what we have found is that it actually has a more negative effect on lower socioeconomic families because it's a babysitter. And the parents don't have an ability to engage because they're working multiple jobs and other things. And so how can we educate both the kids and the community on technology, right? And the unintended consequences and how to use it. So we've got a big lift ahead of us, but we're just going to take us all. But I hope that answers your question a little bit. We're trying it. There's not an easy answer. Not an easy answer. Yeah.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am to hear all of this and how blown away I am to hear all this. I am passionate about Oak Ridge and this. What you have just framed reminded me of some research I did when we began to raise money for the high school renovation. And I read a report about Alden Blankenship, the first superintendent here, and his assistant who wrote this report after 4 years of Oak Ridge. Alden went back to school at Columbia to get his PhD because he'd already been a superintendent somewhere and he thought education had to be better and different than it was. And when I read that report that they wrote 4 years after Oak Ridge School started, it made me cry. What the teachers experienced here was, as one person said, poetry. They had been for years in their own classrooms, nobody talking to anybody else. And the point that Alden Blankenship was making is you design the school system. You figure out problems and you
figure out the best way. And this is that all over again, only decades and decades beyond. So thank you.
Well, I say we did it once, we can do it again. But it's gonna take all of us.
You are doing it.
Yeah.
And I need to talk to you about our mundane project before.
Yes, I need to get some adhesive so we can put them on.
Okay.
One more question.
On the issue of engagement.
Yeah.
Around the country, something that's happening is banning cell phones from the whole school system. What about Oak Ridge? What's our policy?
The state has passed legislation. Right now, they're still working on the rollout and the implementation. It's inconsistent. I just give you a classroom challenge. It's hard. If it's not checked at the door, to be able, I mean, just from a reality standpoint with our students moving around classes and other things like that, it's difficult. So we need community support to understand what we're trying to do is to protect their minds for the time that we have them, to help them focus and to help them engage, because it's just so hard. It was challenging without it. So I know they're looking at that. I don't know what their exact policy in mine. They're checked at the door when they come in. The sad part is I can point you to studies that the very presence of a cell phone in the room is distracting. They've looked at the subconscious anxiety levels because you think, okay, did my friend text me? I wonder what's happening. I mean, it's just we're that way. So we're trying. Please help. I would love to help that way to learn to do that. So
With David Langford International.
yes, I am.
I went to him. Oh, you did pretty good. I had a school bus stuck in my car.
I'd love to talk to him because he's done some stuff. By the way, he works with the Deming Institute. If that's the same Lamford we're talking about, yeah. So they've done some amazing things applying the Deming principles inside their learning schools. Again, the aim is focused at the learning of the individual, and we as a system, because it's a system thing, you know, how to your point, as a system of educators and collaborators, how do we arrange ourselves so it's optimal for the learner, not necessarily optimal for the teacher? And that's a hard one, right?
Are
But
you familiar with David's school in the high school?
yes, I am. Yep. Yes, I am. A great case study, by the way, and what they were able to do there. To your point about students that didn't have anything and what was able to help them shift their entire outlook. Yeah. Phenomenal work. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I want to thank Mark for an amazing presentation, amazing work for our kids here in Oak Ridge. You kept my attention so much, I didn't check my phone once during the whole. Pretty amazing. And on behalf of Cornell, for you, sir, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For being here. Thank you.
Thank you all for your patience. I'm sorry it was so long.